So we're going to start playing with SimplyThick here in a second, the new Easy Mix label. I'll run through these relatively quickly. The big difference, you can mix it with anything. You don't have to shake it. Spoon, fork, knife, no shaking required. Ready to go within seconds, not minutes. And the reason we went through these changes was because the new product is a better product than the original, all right? And to that point, we still are going to be the safest product on the market because we're a fully hydrated gel. And all you have
Now, tell them again what because you said a fully hydrated gel a couple of times.
Right.
Tell the audience why that is such a big deal.
The FDA warning that we breezed through a little bit earlier speaks to unhydrated gums, all right? Now, it originally started with, if anybody asks the FDA a question and the FDA gives you an answer, they seem to never give you a half an answer. They give you pages and pages of answer. So the original on unhydrated gums came from somebody appealing to the FDA to use psyllium seed husks as a fiber component, et cetera, et cetera. So the FDA ends up coming out with detailed explanations and research. And the shorthand version, the way I read it, is anything that's in a powder, any gum in a powder form, all right, has to be properly hydrated to make sure we don't end up causing blockages or causing other issues in the system, all right? If you can go to the detail to make sure you follow the instructions, those powdered thickeners will work fine. That's not a problem. The challenge is if we don't have control, the State Supported Living Center with how many buildings on campus and how many different employees, the challenge was we couldn't be confident that every employee is going to read the back of the label correctly every single time. And unhydrated gums are what we're cautioning against.
And, excuse me, please, that's because the xanthan gum needs a few minutes to bond and to really kind of have a cohesive consistency.
If it's mixed correctly in the right order with the powder in the bottom and the beverage on top and the right amount of agitation.
And adequate hydration, which is just what it's kind of the chicken and the egg. You need adequate hydration and you're trying to get it from this product and, you know, if people won't drink it, you're not going to be adequately hydrated.
Exactly. I had a lot of patients that were dehydrated because
Yeah.
they wouldn't drink their.
It's
weekend
just
whatever.
kind of a negative spiral.
Yeah, it is a spiral.
So with patient compliance, we found, little background, I first was introduced to SimplyThick back in the Chicago market. And we found that when the rep dropped off the samples, at first we were like, what is this? But we tried it. And we found that our patients were much more compliant. The water was clear. It didn't have a taste. It didn't thicken as it stood on their bedstand. They could see through the water because as humans we're hardwired not to drink murky water. So we had pulmonologists approaching us and GIs coming up and saying, what are you doing? Our frequent flyers aren't frequent flyers anymore. The patients are more compliant because there's no taste. It looks better and they accept it. So now you've got fewer UTIs, fewer readmissions to the hospital, which helps with Medicare reimbursement. Medications are absorbed appropriately. We don't see as much constipation. All of these things can be costly for facilities, costly for families who are at home, frustrating for families. We all know that, you know, when somebody, whether it's a little one or an adult with constipation, they're uncomfortable, they're not easy to live with. So it makes life a lot easier.
Breakdown. Another
Skin
thing.
breakdown.
Yeah.
And like we said, it will mix safely with everything except the few products that we mentioned, the 80, you know, more than 80 proof alcohol, the clear protein drinks, and the arginate.
Arginate clear. Arginate extra? Arginate extra.
Okay.
The one on that slide. Yeah, that one.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's pretty obvious that obviously I believe in the product, but it does really, the true story, doctors did approach us and ask us what we were doing because the compliance did go up so dramatically. So, yeah.
And it doesn't change at all based upon the temperature of whatever you're putting. So like hot coffee, ice cold water doesn't really.
Eugenia, 2 minutes on hot beverages.
Sorry.
Ready? Okay.
Sorry.
So,
I'm just curious.
SimplyThick.
A whole nother hour, we're good.
SimplyThick gets into the new formulation, all right? And some of us have gifts, and others have specializations, and others are just here to move the luggage. So we get the new product, and speech path gets samples. What do you think? How does it work? RD gets samples, how's it gonna fit in the puree program, how's it gonna do this? They send it to me and they say, see if you can break it. It's like, okay, you know, because apparently that's my reputation. When I started with SimplyThick 6-7 years ago, the way I was trained was, you thicken anything with SimplyThick, and if you freeze it, like the ice cubes for the margaritas, when those thaw, they will come back to the viscosity they were before they froze. So we'll take nectar thick ice cubes in a nectar thick margarita, and when the ice cubes melt, we still maintain our viscosity. So that's awesome, so we say that a lot. On the hot side, our standard answer was, you thicken it, you heat it up, when it comes back down to temperature, it will maintain its viscosity that it was before you heated it. So I thought, well, I've been told that, but I've never really thickened it, heated it up to boiling, bring it back down, and we didn't have a flow test before. So now I'm doing all this in my kitchen, and my garage fridge had no beer in it for about 6 weeks while I was testing all these different things. So lost where I was. I said beer and I lost my train of thought.
I just trusted that you brought it up.
Right. So now we got this test. All right. So I heat up coffee and it comes back down and it's not as thick as it was. So then I heat up coffee and then thicken it, and it's still not as thick as it should, even when it cools down. So I tried every direction, and I tried the new SimplyThick, I tried the old SimplyThick, and neither one of them would work. So I called the Heather in the office, who's in the lab, and I said, you know, we always said this, and this is what I found, and she said, you know, we found that a week ago as well. So we went out and got the cornstarch thickeners and the xanthan gum powders. We followed the instructions. We did that hot temperature test, both thickening it and heating it, or heating it and thickening it. And guess what? On this test, it will never come back. And then you realize, she said, we go back to the viscometer, and the readings are inconsistent with this. So we take all this information, we send it back to IDDSI literally 6 to 8 weeks ago, saying, so we've got this protocol and a field test, but have we ever talked about the temperature, A, of the sample we're testing? Because when I do milk at 38 degrees, I get one reading, and when I do milk at room temperature, I get a different reading. But milk isn't served at room temperature. So how's it, okay, so now we're back into the physiology of an individual patient regarding cold and hot and the different levels. So,
And some can tolerate a hotter beverage, and some let it cool down,
right.
you know,
It
even
looks
more.
like-
So it just depends on
And,
personal
and
preference.
it looks like that
changes
number, that
temperature.
temperature
Yeah,
is
yeah.
about 170 degrees, where once it goes above that, it'll never act the same on this viscosity test when it comes back down. So
Okay.
our recommendation would be thicken it and heat it up in a microwave or wherever you want, but keep it under 160. Or thicken it while it's hot, but make sure that it's 160 or less when you thicken it. Either of those will work and won't be a problem, because it seems to be about 20 degrees
I
higher
just
than
did
that.
it the other day at 140, it was perfect,
Right.
no problem. But I started at 180 out of the microwave. So I let it cool down, it took about 5 minutes, it got to 140, thickened it, perfect, flowed exactly correctly.
And when we
to
were
now.
doing this at Mercy Hospital in Oklahoma City earlier this week, the commercial 350 census acute care building, and we started talking about coffee. And in the kitchen, their coffee machine is set at 125 degrees.
Oh.
Now, those of you who love coffee, 125 degrees is still hot, and this goes back to my Dynex doing a million temperature tests.
Yes.
When we're holding food on a steam table, we need 140 degrees or higher for most foods, that's the standard, or for cold foods, below 40 degrees. For serving temperature, once we put it on the plate and get it to the patient, it's supposed to be at a presentable temperature, or an appealing temperature. Well, what's that? For you, it might be 115 degrees, and 120, 125. What I will tell you is, for most people, if your scoop of mashed potatoes is 125 degrees, you will blow on it before you put it in your mouth. Typically. You'll get that close and you'll go, this is hot, and you blow on it. Once you get below 125, okay, but really still 120 is pretty warm for the temperature of food. So that's just something to file in with that when we get to what's hot and what's not. To your point on viscosity, 160 is what we're gonna start telling people, and it's not for ours, it's for all the thickeners, and especially when this test catches on as everybody that sees it says, yeah, I'm gonna be able to use this. Just know that when we get to a certain temperature of heat, we're gonna get a different result on this type of test than we would on a
On a viscometer.
proper viscometer. Correct.
Nancy, did you thicken it first and then heated it up? Or that when you did the one to 140? You thickened it first?
No. I heated my
Heated-
coffee,
uh-huh.
I took it out, and it was at 180. And
Okay.
I had him in my ear saying,
Right.
test it at another temperature.
Yes.
So I waited 5 minutes till it dropped to 140, then I thickened it.
Okay,
It was perfect.
Thickened
I
after
thickened
you
it to
did it.
nectar,
Okay.
and it was right between 4 and 8 on the syringe.
So when we're
4
having
ounces.
parents who are cooking their soup
Right.
and they want the kiddo to eat the soup because there's a lot of cultures where soup is a mainstay.
Right.
Hey, then you're gonna want them to have it cool off a bit
Yeah.
off the stove.
Absolutely.
And
It
then
was
add the
still
thickening.
hot to my lip and touch. I mean, I still had to blow on it. At 140, we're kind of programmed thinking, everything's got to be high, 180. That was scorching. I would have never drunk the coffee, So at 140, it was still hot. And,
Right.
You could teach a mom just to throw a thermometer in it. It's not complicated, just to test it and get a feel for 140 to 160 and then thicken it and they're ready to go. For soup, for tea, for coffee.
Hot cocoa.
Yeah, hot cocoa.
so the heat's what changes it, but cold beverages, you haven't found that it's just only when it cools
That's
down?
more the fat content we're
Okay.
noticing.
Okay.
Like in milk,
Mhm.
the fat overall
Okay.
will, obviously, fat's gonna slow a flow. So the
they could
higher
make
fat,
ice cubes with water,
Oh,
poured in
yeah.
an ice tray.
Sure. It's
And
fabulous.
it's
We
still-
have 'em here.
Okay.
Oh, that's
and,
awesome.
a lot of people don't think that next step. They'll think we just can't have ice cubes, number one, because that's what we're programmed to think. Or they never thought about it affecting the integrity of the product and just would go in and throw an ice cube in and, oh my God, I never thought that would affect the integrity. When we have a food show, we will bring the ice cubes and put them in iced tea and people are just amazed that, we thought that deeply to do the nectar cubes. And then they start registering, oh my God, that's right. If we would have just put a regular cube in, we would have thinned the liquid out.
Yeah, using SimplyThick in ice cubes,
It's wonderful.
for the families I used it with, it was
Yeah.
life changing.
It is. It
Especially
is.
in the
Absolutely
climate that's so
life-changing.
hot.
And in the Texas, in the South, you have sweet tea drinkers. And you have a 70-year-old man who had a stroke who is angry, number one, to be on this thickener. I mean, I've had this happen to me. And then you're gonna take my ice away out of my sweet tea? I'm just not gonna drink it all. And I can attest my husband was in that mode, just completely. And I didn't know about this product then. And so it can be really life-changing. And it can be frozen into popsicles and you can make granita. There's wonderful recipes at our website. Just beautiful.
I think what we did for many years was when we only had one product, you would thicken it and you'd put ice in, so you put a little more thickener in because you knew that
Sure,
the ice
yes.
would
Yeah.
melt and you wanted to compensate for that. So by
Right.
the time you got finished with the science project,
Yes.
it was
Yeah.
terrible. And they weren't gonna drink it anyhow.
Right,
Right.
right.
Especially if they saw you going through the trouble to get it right.
A little
Yeah.
more, stir it, put a little extra ice in because it's so hot out, a little more.
Yeah.
It got really complicated.
Yeah.
Two things.
Ma'am.
Chris texted, which Chris is an SLP who used to live here and was part of Feeding Fun Night, and she's in North Carolina now. She had triplets. She worked at Starbucks all through school. And she said at Starbucks, they heat the coffee to between 140 and 160. So standard temperature for coffee is serving at Starbucks is 152 for a regular drink. Extra hot is 164.
Excellent,
So-
which proves my point,
Yes.
saying that we are programmed to think the hotter the better, it's gotta
Yes.
be scalding. That's not the
Right, and who here, when you get your Starbucks coffee,
Yeah.
at 100, just
Just
a regular at
down,
152, no one can drink
Yeah.
150 degree heat. And this is the conversation we usually have during an in-service at a long-term care building. If your question is viscosity at 180 degrees, don't worry about it because you're going to be writing up a burn incident report. Have an aspiration report anyway, so don't worry about it. You'll be
Good
fine.
point, good point. So then what you're saying is we can either thicken when it is hot and too hot, but as it cools, it will be okay.
I think what we will say
Tell
is,
me,
what I
remind me,
think we
when
will,
do I put that thickener?
what I think we will say is, you can thicken anything you want up to 160 degrees.
Okay,
If whatever you have is over 160, wait for it to come back below 160
okay.
before you thicken
do it.
with any xanthan gum or starch powder.
But if you,
Or-
160
gel,
is the
any of them.
magic number.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
When we get back some of the, because we tested it and then on all our stuff and the competitor stuff, we took those results and sent it to IDDSI, because at least now we've got kind of a central clearinghouse.
Yes.
So they'll run everything through the grinder as well. And then they'll come out and make sure everybody's on board with, hey, 160 is a good number, and we'll peer review and make sure that we're on the right page.
but you can reheat somebody's coffee or hot drink or soup.
That's a good
You
question.
can reheat it if, you know, they take off, they have to go to x-ray, or, you know, a neighbor comes over and they can't be, whatever. If it gets too cool and they want it hotter, it can be microwaved, and then of course, they need to let it cool down to the 160 range.
Okay, so their coffee has cooled down, they nuke it to reheat it, it goes above 160, but when it comes back down to drinkable, it'll be okay?
What I would say is no. Once it's thickened and it goes over 160, you could be in a gray area, so
Okay.
caution first, take it off. Exactly.
Okay,
Right.
so
Don't
don't, 160
overheat it.
is a hard.
That's where we're at right
limit.
now. That's-
Okay.
I'm not gonna say hard, that's the number I was given,
Okay,
but I don't wanna, we're gonna let
That's
you saw
where
my
we
dishwashing
think we are.
experience? Yeah, the
Yes.
dishwasher says, yeah, 160 is great, but
okay,
we'll have professionals confirm all that. How about-
okay, but that's good. Oh, she also says a kid's drink is served at 1:30.
At Starbucks?
Mhm. Just, you know, for your database.
Sure. All right,
Okay.
I'm ready for a Frappuccino.
I know. See how much fun this
All
is?
of a sudden, yeah.